But the point about bringing up the baby boomers is that that's the most important consumer block in the history of the planet. There's 80 million baby boomers. There's also millions more people over 50 who, like I said, are not baby boomers. I think it's maybe 100 million. But we're talking about a huge number of people who are affluent. So you've got all these 100 million Americans who now are approaching the period in life where they have time, generally retiring, generally their kids are grown up if they have kids at all. And they've got the time and the money to spend on luxury purchases. I think the statistic is like 70%, 75%, something ridiculous. About 70% of luxury spending in this country is driven by this age group.
Hey, what's up, everybody? That was Jay Croft, this episode's guest on the podcast. And you heard that right. The 50 and over demographic is responsible for 70% of all luxury spending. That is an economically powerful demographic. And Jay Croft brings his unique background in the media and as a copywriter, as a writer, to this demographic to help you capture and tap in on this market. So this podcast is full of information to help you do that starting tomorrow. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Jay Croft.
Right. That's the whole purpose, man.
Yeah. All right. I've been working all day. I've been up since 4:30.
Yeah, the same here. Here. My morning starts early, especially on Tuesday. Yeah. All right, we're live. What's up, everybody? As you can see, we've already been having a conversation with Jay Croft, my guest on this episode of the podcast. Welcome to Masters in Fitness Business Podcast, where you get to stand on the shoulders of giants. And today I have a giant coming straight from Atlanta. And Jay Croft, he owns Prime Fit Content. And it's basically content for that demographic of 50 and over, which if you remember my podcast with Rick Mayo, he said that is the richest demographic in the United States. So it's definitely one that should have your attention if it doesn't already. And Jay generates content specifically targeted at that demographic. But before we get into all of that and talking about the ins and outs of the nuances, I want to give you a little bit of a background on Jay. I came to know Jay. I came across his page, Prime Fit Content, on Facebook, and looked at it and really liked it. And I reached out to him, or maybe he reached out to me. I'm not sure, but we started a dialogue, and he's got some really interesting ideas. So I'm really happy to have him on the podcast. And he has an interesting background as well. He started out in the newspaper business. For those of you who remember newspapers, where they had to print it, you actually had to open it and read it, you drink your morning coffee and all of that. And surprise, surprise, he realized that the print media is slowly going by the wayside. So he got out of print media, and now he started this Prime Fit Content. He didn't know what it was going to be like. He didn't think it was going to he thought it was going to be a side gig, but it's kind of taken on a life of its own because it's a growing demographic, and they're very powerful when it comes to the consumer market. And then he also works at CNN on the side. So he has a background in media, and especially print media, copywriting, things like that. So that background definitely lends itself to what he's doing now. So Jay, anything else you want to add on that? Welcome to the show. And if there's anything else you want to add to that, just jump on in.
Well, hey, thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be here, and hello to everyone who's watching and listening. I come at this from a little bit different background. Like you said, most of my career was spent in daily newspapers, and I currently work part-time at CNN on writing and editing for the website. And I also have about a decade working in the corporate communications and marketing departments of some really huge corporations that are based here in Atlanta. And wasn't quite the gig for me, but it gave me a great opportunity to learn a more business sense to communications. In journalism, we had one mission. Skill sets are very similar, and then in corporate communications, it might be a slightly different mission, but I was learning from some great minds and great teams I was privileged to work with at companies like Coca-Cola on how do you move masses of people to take action through your writing in order to drive business goals. So just that between newspapers and these big corporations and a lot of digital media work I've done at newspapers and at CNN, I've tried to marry those two with one of my personal passions, which has always been fitness. I'm not a trainer. I don't really have any intentions of becoming one, but I'm conversant in it. I've been going to the gym my whole life, and it's at some point I said, I'm going to spend the rest of my career writing about things that I care about. So what do I care about? And this was the primary subject that came up.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
So that's how you got into the Prime Fit content. And when did you come up with the idea of generating content for this demographic? Obviously, you're in this demographic,
Yeah.
but what made you pick this demographic, and what drove you to say, you know what, there's a need in the market for content for this demographic? What was your thinking there?
Oh, that's a great question, and I'll try not to go on too long about it. Feel free to stop me if I'm going on and on about it. But like I said, I'm 55. I'll be 56 next month. So around the time I turned 50, a few things were happening in my professional life and personal life. I just was realizing that I didn't want to be in these big corporate communications departments anymore, that I wanted to write about things that I cared about, and I needed to find a way to do that, which would be both creative and make sense financially, so I could make a living at it. And about that time, I began noticing that I felt somewhat invisible when it came to marketing, not only in fitness, but as it regards fitness, in the sense that I could just tell that messages weren't being sent to me anymore. I didn't take it personally. I just made me think, oh, that's because I'm not that prized demographic anymore of late teens to early to mid 40s. Those are the years that everybody wants you, pop culture, TV shows, radio, songs, Hollywood, all of that is really geared toward youth. Certainly the fitness industry is geared toward youth. A lot of the marketing that I saw was all about being young and hot and sexy and getting a beach body and all of that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But, I never had a six-pack when I was young and in great shape. So it's not really a priority for me now either. So that's kind of what got me started, like a dissatisfaction in what I was doing with my career, combined with this aging of my own that I was doing and noticing how I was aging into a different demographic. And then I just remembered that back when I was a newspaper editor at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, I used to get packages, big fat envelopes from syndicated companies who would mail them to all the editors at the papers around the country and say, hey, for a low price every month, we'll send you a ton of content. And you can pick and choose what you want to use. Use a little, use a lot, same price, doesn't matter to us. These would be things like recipes and crossword puzzles and comics and advice columns, kind of the filler that every paper needs sometimes. Needed sometimes, I don't know if they still do. So I was kind of inspired by that idea. And then I just looked into it a little bit. Being a trained reporter, I did my due diligence, and I couldn't find anybody out there who was doing this, who was addressing people over 50. I found addressing people in their 20s who want to be hot at the beach, and I found nursing homes whose idea of physical activity was batting the balloon back and forth for people in their 90s who are, I don't mean to be funny about it, but are, not going to be with us much longer. I thought, that is not me. I've always been active. I'm going to continue to be active. Most of my friends and family members in their 50s, 60s, and 70s are the same way. Somebody's missing the boat here. I need to look into this. I looked into it. Found an organization called the Functional Aging Institute, which is based in Indiana and focuses on helping gyms serve this market. And everyone I met in the fitness industry said, you should write for us, you should write for us, you should write for us. So it was really just kind of a combination of all these things. And I thought, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to create syndicated content that's going to be really affordable, that a lot of people can can have and will want to have and make use of, that will let people in communities all across the country and other English-speaking countries as well, to let the community know that this fitness center wants them, that it wants your business, that you're different, that everybody wants to be a little bit different. And like Rick Mayo's on to, like you were saying earlier about Rick, this is a huge opportunity. Anybody who's not pursuing the over 50 market doesn't want to make a lot of money. That's all I can say.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I agree with you. And that's a great story. And I agree with you 100%. Most of the franchise and kind of big box gyms, they definitely market to that younger demographic. Although I do see them changing a little bit. They're getting away a little bit from the 6-pack abs and the booty shorts to, maybe heavier people or people more in the typical of the general population.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't see a lot of fit over 50 content, and from a personal standpoint, I'll be 52 at the end of this month. Yeah. And I'm like you, I'm far from batting around a balloon. I work out, I lift heavy, I do jujitsu, I play hockey, I play with my kids, all of those things. So I'm not this kind of geriatric, person that's ready for the home or, ready to, move to Florida and walk on the beach with my black socks and my flip-flops.
And your metal detector, right?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Looking for gold chains and loose change. But so I agree with you 100%. So that's my shtick from a personal standpoint. But when you talk to Rick, what Rick says is that this demographic has bigger economic resources than any of the other demographics combined. And when you get them first of all, and they're interested in personal training, not classes, not group fitness, because group fitness is programmed for the younger set. So when you're 50, you still want to work out. I still want to work out, and I still want to work out hard, but I can't work out like I'm 20. I can't do it. I pay the price the next day. So I can still.
I'm not trying to be 20. I don't think you are.
No, absolutely. I just want to be able to enjoy my quality of life, move through life, full range of motion, pain-free. Boom. That's it. And so that's what I want to do. And most of the franchise and the group fitness classes don't take that into consideration. They're programmed for and by 20-somethings for 20-somethings. And so if I'm, a 52-year-old guy going in that class, I might be able to just grunt through it and have my pride get me through one class, but I'm going to pay a hell of a price for the rest of the week.
Right.
And it's just not worth it for me. It's not something that I can do on a consistent basis. So I find that most people, and Rick stated this also, that most people in that demographic do personal training, which is a higher price point. And not only is that higher price point, but people in that demographic stay with you longer, where the younger demographic hops around more. I mean, do you find that to be true?
Oh, absolutely. Rick and I are looking at the same research. And this is one of the things, like I said, when I was doing my due diligence a couple of years ago, thinking about all of this, one of the things that compelled me to think this might be a good idea, because people at this, well, first of all, we're talking about the core of this age group is the baby boomers. We're also talking about younger than that, because Gen X is coming on strong now. And we're also talking about older than baby boomers. Mm-hmm. My mother's 83. She wants to be fit. She takes care of herself. She wasn't born in those years of the baby boomer years. But the point about bringing up the baby boomers is that that's the most important consumer block in the history of the planet. Baby boomers are not like any other generation. I'm barely a baby boomer. It ended in 64. I was born in 63. Anyone who's a baby boomer was kind of proud about it. Like, yeah, that's right. I'm a baby boomer. I ran the world. We ran the world. We invented rock and roll. We did all these things, right? In the 60s and the 70s and the glory days and all that stuff.
Counterculture, yeah.
Yeah, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's, 80 million baby boomers. There's also millions more people over 50 who, like I said, are not baby boomers. I think it's maybe 100 million just in the United States. You probably have people listening who are in Canada, United Kingdom, Australia. I know I have people who do business with me in those countries as well. So I don't want to just limit it to the United States. But we're talking about a huge number of people who are affluent. Baby boomers made a lot of money. They're used to being catered to by every industry, by every market. And that's because they have the money and because there's such a large block. There was never anything like the baby boomers. So you've got all these 100 million Americans who now are approaching the period in life where they have time, generally retiring, generally their kids are grown up if they have kids at all. And they've got the time and the money to spend on luxury purchases. I think the statistic is like 70%, 75%, something ridiculous. About 70% of luxury spending in this country is driven by this age group. So yeah, you want to go get a bunch of 25-year-olds in your gym because they spend a slightly higher percentage of their income at the gym. Well, so what? They're not making any money. They don't have any money. They're going to bail on you the minute they get a new girlfriend who wants to join the new Orange Theory across town. They're going to get a new job in a different city. They're just not as wealthy or as committed to you. People in the over 50 demographic have the time, they have the money, they want a personal relationship, even if it's just to say hello to the guy behind the counter. They want that. Maybe it's a personal trainer, like you were saying. Whatever it is, they want those relationships. It's really important to this generation in ways that it's not to younger people. So they're going to form bonds with you that are going to last. You get a customer or a prospect in there at 55, 60 years old, you could have them for 30 more years, right? Are you going to get some recent college graduate who's going to stick with you for 30 years? You know your business better than I do, but I would think not. So yeah, they're very wealthy. They want the personal training. They have the time to spend on it. They have the money to spend on it, and they'll stick with you longer. They're awesome customers.
Couple of good points, and I wanted to hit on one, that the younger demographic spends a larger percentage of their income, but it's a smaller pie than the older demographic. So even though it's a larger percentage, it's a smaller net amount than what the baby boomers and the over 50. And then the second one that you were talking about was I totally just lost it. I should have written it down, but hopefully it'll come back to me. But you made a couple of really good points there that I think are. Oh, you talked about how they. I know what it was. The personal connection, because that older crowd, they grew up before the iPhone.
Yeah.
So they're not used to. They didn't grow up with the text. And email was a relatively new invention. Email, they grew up without text, emails. We grew up in the generation where you had to be home when the street lights came on. And when somebody called the house, if you were on the phone was busy. Or if they called the house and nobody was home, you just were unavailable, which doesn't exist today. But they grew up building and getting used to those personal face-to-face connections. Like they go to the restaurant, they know Sally knows what they like to order. They go down to the stores, like, hey, John, did my such and such come in? Yeah, Bill, it came in. Here you go. I ordered it just for you. Those personal relationships are what they grew up with and what they know. So, they're not going to join your gym through a text or an email. You might get them to come in on a phone call, but you're going to have to get them face-to-face to get them to join. And you're going to have that face-to-face connection with them, in order to keep. And if you can do that, then you'll keep them. Absolutely. They'll stay with you for 20, 30 years. I agree with you 100% on that.
I want to just add to something that you said, though. It's a big myth that people in this age group are technophobic or are afraid to be on social media or don't like to text. That's not entirely true. They're huge on Facebook. They use Facebook a lot, and they engage in a lot of online shopping, and they rely on blogs to make shopping decisions for anything that's a significant purchase, like joining a studio or a gym might be. So they use the technology. Think about it. Why they want to see their grandchildren on Facebook, right? It's why my mother's on there. She texts all the time. She'll probably text while we're talking here. I hope I turned the notification off. Yeah, she's not afraid of it.
Yeah. Right.
But I know that when I've been going to the same gym for many years here in Atlanta, and every time I walk in, the person behind the desk says, "Hi, Jay, nice to see you." Every time. That means something to me. Now, maybe it doesn't to younger people. I don't know. I'm not afraid of the internet. I'm not afraid of texting. I don't think that it's necessarily like this cleave of, if you're over 50, you're terrified of communications. But you want that personal relationship, and it means more to you at this stage in life. Or maybe it's the different generations. I'm not sure. I guess we'll have to see what happens when millennials get a little older, if they're still going to be as impersonal as they're supposedly are now. I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's a great point in that they're not afraid to use technology. They're actually pretty savvy, but the personal relationships mean more to them.
Absolutely.
They definitely resonate more with him, because I'm like you. My mom, she's going to be 82 at the end of this month, and she's on Facebook as well, so she can keep up with her kids and her grandkids, and it can be kind of comical because a lot of times she'll comment on something that I post, meaning to like message me, like private message me, but instead she'll leave it as a comment on the post. Yeah. So I'll have to say, "Hey mom, this is the protocol," Right. But hey, she's 83, she's 82, and she's on Facebook. So more power to her.
That's right.
So I agree with you 100%. So let's go ahead and get into the content. So we talked about the economic power and what you need to do to capture and speak to this population. So let's talk about your content. What are some of the things that you put into your product that speaks? Because you talked about when you were working for the corporate giants, you learned how to wordsmith things to bring people to action.
Right.
So how do you do that with your content?
Right. Well, the content is, you all know that you need to be communicating to your prospects and to your clients alike. And based on what we've been talking about here for a while, and what you probably already know from Rick Bale and a lot of other people, you know that this market is primed for that. So you need to be communicating regularly with them. That doesn't mean advertising with them regularly. It means sharing useful, engaging, helpful content that is going to help you build a relationship with them, so that they get to know you and they like you and they trust you and they want to do business with you when the time comes. And then once they're clients of yours, the content keeps them engaged and keeps them feeling like you still care about them and you're more than just a dollar to them, and that you that you want to share interesting stuff with them. So that's kind of the premise. It's not advertising. You're not going to put one of my articles in an email newsletter and get 10 people banging down your doors. It's more of a slow relationship building that you're going to have with your community, and a way that you stand out. Back in the old days when I was working in newspapers, how we consumed media was so different, and how we found places to do business with was so different. We picked up the newspaper and we looked at what people wanted us to look at, and we saw ads that people paid for, or we turned on the TV and there were 3 channels, right? Remember that?
And when the president was on, there was no watching TV.
There was nothing. Yeah, right. That was it. So, now newspapers don't play that role in communities anymore that they did. And there's so much television that local TV probably doesn't really either. The way we get information now about shopping, dating, travel, news, everything is through this thing and through the laptop, right? And we get that through searching for what we want and for looking at recommendations that our friends make. So that changes the game a little bit for how we find information. And that changes the game entirely on how businesses and brands need to tell their stories. Because if you're not telling your story and you just leave it out there thinking, well, if I build it, they will come. Oh, it was a great movie, Field of Dreams. I cried along with everyone else. But It's not true. If you build it, they will come. It's just not true in this day and age. You have to build it, and then you have to tell your story. You have to engage over and over again, regularly, consistently, with good stuff, so that people in your community know who you are and what you're about. For instance, if someone goes on the internet to Google gyms for people over 50 in my town, are you going to come up? You should, right? But something will come up. Some other gym will come up, and they're going to have size 2s in booty shorts with loud hip hop music blaring and dudes lifting up their shirts to show their 6-packs, right? Somebody's going to do that because they want to tell the world, that's who I want. I want booty chicks and 6-pack bros to come into my gym, okay? Similarly, there are other niche markets that are growing out there. There are a lot of trainers who want to work with women who are hoping to get pregnant or are pregnant or have recently had a baby and want to stay in shape. There are trainers focusing on children and tweens and teenagers who are athletically gifted or whose parents think they might be athletically gifted, right? And they want to spend money to give them every advantage that they can in the sport that they're trying to pursue.
Scholarship.
Yeah, right? Exactly. So similarly, if you want people over 50 to come into your business, you have to let them know. And the way you do that nowadays is through blogs on your website, through email newsletters, and through social media, primarily Facebook when we're talking about this demographic. They're not on Twitter, Instagram, they don't, but they are on Facebook. So what I do is give you magazine quality articles and photographs that you use however you want to, whenever you want to reach your community of prospects and clients through primarily your blog and your website, your email newsletters, and your social media, primarily Facebook. That's what I've designed it for, and that's what most of my subscribers use it for, but you can do whatever you want to with it. And some of them do come up with creative ways to use it, which is kind of fun. And the idea is that I'm presenting interesting, you're presenting. No one knows about me. I don't put my name on this. It doesn't say Prime Fit content. It's from you. And it shows that you care enough to engage your audience, your prospects, and your clients with interesting, engaging, fun, useful information.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. One thing I really want to unpack that you said in that is consistent.
Yeah.
So it has to be consistent, because I see a lot of gym owners and they're all over the place. There's no rhyme and reason to what they're posting. One day it might be, hey, it's hump day. It's a great glute workout. The next day it's like, oh, Bob had a knee replacement. We're rehabbing him. And then the next day it's like, oh, Shirley just had a baby and she's bouncing back already. So it's like they're hitting all over the place. It's like what I call the spaghetti. It's like you just throw it against the wall and see what sticks. Yep. Exactly. And see what sticks, instead of like really targeting and narrowing down and going deep into a niche. So can you expand on that a little bit? Like when you say consistency, what does that mean as far as frequency and like really nailing down that niche and what that looks like? Right.
Well, I think first of all, you can have several niches. A lot of my subscribers focus specifically on the over 50 market, and some of them don't. They're a general community gym, but they want to make sure that this underserved market gets their message too. So it's not necessarily at the exclusion of anybody else.
Okay.
That's up to each business owner, right? But this niche, really any audience that you're communicating with values and appreciates consistency, because they want to rely on you. They want to come to you. Want them to rely on you. You want them to look forward to hearing from you. And if you don't take it seriously enough to be consistent, a few things happen. First of all, they can tell. Audiences are super sophisticated now. Even 50, 60, 70, 80-year-olds, they know when you're full of shit. They know when you're BSing them.
No, you can say full of shit. We cuss on this show. I cuss. That's who I am, man. I just try to be who I am. I'm in my office. I got my lunch bag over there, my toaster oven. Like, this is me. So go right ahead.
Okay, look. So if you set yourself up as someone who cares about them, and then you don't have the professionalism to establish some rigor around your communications, then clearly you don't care about them, and they will know that. But also, one of the main reasons you need to be consistent about this is I don't like to get into SEO too much. That's a whole rabbit hole that I'm not going down, and I'm no SEO expert, and I'm suspicious of most people who say they are. So I don't want to talk about SEO too much, but your website will do better in any SEO ranking, and your Facebook will do better if you are consistently posting high quality content that's of a certain substance. And oftentimes that means length. Although really I don't want to talk about a specific length because it changes all the time. But the point is, you are rewarded by the search engines, including Facebook, if you regularly, consistently engage with high quality stuff. So that's good. And the other thing is your audience appreciates it, comes to rely on you, sees that you're a professional person who cares about them enough to establish a steady pace. I think you should be posting on Facebook 3-4 times a week, and you should be emailing them 3 or 4 times a week, and you should be posting a new blog post at least once a week. So you'll find other experts who will say you should be emailing every day of the week, and you should be Facebooking 12 times a day and all of that. I'm not going to go that far, but you probably need to do it more than you think you need to do it. I talk to a lot of people who say, I don't want to bug people. I don't want them to, to think I'm just that jerk who sends them too many emails. Well, I get it. I don't want to be that guy either. But the simple truth is that we all get tons of email. We're all inundated with tons of stuff on the internet all the time. So you need to be putting it out there regularly so that they can see it, so that they can notice it, so that they can say, oh, that's that nice guy Jim with that gym I want to try sometime, next month after the grandkids leave or whatever it is, they want to rely on you. If they don't want to read it, they don't have to read it. But I don't open every email. I bet you don't either, and I bet you most of the people on your email list don't either. So get a good email list, use it, build up your Facebook following, use it, and put something on your blog post at least once a week that's good and has some substance to it. So what I send you is, every week I send you a long article that's about 500 words. These are all original things that I come up with on my own, because it's involving, meaty, substantive topics that are relevant to this demographic. And then I give you a shorter piece that's 250 words that might be a little more fun, a little more light, or might be focused more on something in the news. If there's a new batch of studies that reveals something that's relevant to this market and exercise in under half an hour. I give you a recipe that I curate from numerous sources. The recipe is healthy for this demographic, low potassium, high fiber, all that stuff. I curate those. Again, they're not mine, and I source them, of course, so you know where they're coming from. And then I give you a meme that is inspirational or funny, involving a famous saying or a celebrity who's in this age group who's doing well. Something that you can use and people will see and have a visceral response to. So things of different speeds, different lengths, different topics. You get that every week. I also chop it up into pieces so that all you've got to do is cut and paste. This goes in the first email, this goes in the second email, this goes in the third email, and this goes on Facebook day 1, day 2, et cetera, just to make it really easy for you to not only have this good stuff, but also to use it.
Yeah.
And to be consistent.
A lot of good points in there. One idea that I can probably give you for a meme, it would be like a Felicity Huffman 14-day prison workout, something along those lines.
Oh, you went there. Yeah.
But when you were talking about, on a serious note, when you were talking about the SEO, and we were talking about that before we started recording, how they're always changing the algorithm, just like Facebook. They're always changing the algorithm, so to keep up with that is a full-time job. And most people that run gyms just don't have the time. But you can bypass all that by putting quality content.
Mm-hmm.
Quality trumps the algorithm every time, because if you put something out that's good, that resonates with people, resonates with the demographic that you want it to, then they seek you out, they find you. And that automatically raises your penetration on Facebook. It raises your SEO, all of those things, because you're putting out quality content. Do you agree with that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And of course, with social and with email, it's easy to share, right? Hey,
Right.
Betty Lou, here's this great article I saw. You might want to read it too. I'll tell you, just today, I swear you're going to think I made this up, but this actually happened. My most recent subscriber just joined. Tuesday. He joined Sunday, and great guy, got a thriving business, turning his attention now, kind of like Rick. He's had a long, established, thriving fitness business in his community, and now he's turning to this market. And he used my stuff for the first time this week in his newsletter. And he called me today to say that he's getting text messages from people about how much they like the article he sent them. He said that he's never once received a text message, a phone call, or an email about anything that he's emailed anyone before. So he was delighted about that the very first time he sent them some good stuff, they commented on it. And we all know that if one person liked it enough to comment, there's probably more who liked it and just, maybe they're shy or didn't feel like calling or texting or what have you. So yeah, people notice. You can tell the good stuff.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Quality is key. So, and then talking about this demographic, this over 50 crowd, and we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording. Male to female, what's the ratio? Who controls the purse strings? Who do you really want to speak to?
Well, I guess if we're being truthful, it's the women. I would give it a more than slight edge, but
maybe 60-40, somewhere in that range, or higher.
Maybe a little higher than that. It's hard to say exactly, but I will say this: that women tend to be the instigator. We're talking about in traditional long-term male-female marriages. Not everyone over 50 is in that kind of setup, but if we're talking about those people, then yes, the women tend to be the ones who instigate things and who take a more active role in maintaining the fitness of the couple, and who are more social. They might bring along a girlfriend or two to go with them to the sessions and have coffee afterwards, that kind of thing. And women in this demographic tend to control the purse strings. I bet a lot of people listening to this will know that, when they're dealing with a man, with a prospect, and you do the assessment and the sales consultation, and you say, okay, well, Ed, what do you think? Ed says, well, I have to check with the wife first, because the woman controls the spending, right? So you really want her on board. Make no mistake. And the women who are typically of the grandma age, of the grandma generation, they command a hugely disproportionate amount of discretionary spending in our country. Which is not to say you should ignore the men by any means, but the motivation is different. Men that I talk to, that I write about, they still want to beat their brother-in-law's ass at tennis, right? Have yet to meet a woman who says, I still want to beat that bitch at tennis. But men will say it, right?
Yeah.
And, with both genders, they want to play with the grandchildren. If you've ever haven't played with a toddler lately, I'm gonna tell you, it's a lot of work. Okay, Getting up off the floor can be a lot of work. Picking one of those llamas up 1,000 times is a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
So people want to be the fun nana. Nobody wants to be boring nana, right? Mm-hmm. So there's that. There's also travel. If you are finally at the stage of life where you have the time and money to go places you've always wanted to go, some of those places involve some physical work. Maybe you want to. My older sister and her husband recently went on that famous hike across part of Spain. If you say it, I'll remember the name, but I'm blanking on it now. It's sort of a religious pilgrimage for Catholics, and So you've got to be in shape for that. They're in great shape, but they got in better shape because that was important to them. They're about 60, and they knew they wanted to do that. We all have stories. Anybody who's dealt with people in fitness in this demographic can tell you about people who know that even if it's just an airplane ride somewhere, they've got to drag that bag through the airport. That's the Atlanta airport. That's a hike. I don't know about where you live.
It's a city.
You're going to do some walking at the Atlanta airport.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to carry a bag. Maybe you have your purse over your shoulder, right? And you've got to put the bag in the overhead compartment. All that stuff, not to mention any sightseeing you want to do or any hiking you want to do or any physical activity you want to do. So travel is really important. Grandkids are really important. Maintaining their competitive edge in sports or just the safety of sports. They want to be able to enjoy tennis and golf and all these things without hurting themselves. Gardening, right? That's a big one. I don't know if you get a lot of 28-year-old people in there who want to help you garden, but you'll get a lot of people in this demographic who do. And again, gardening, you might be surprised to know, you're not, Jim, because you know this. Gardening's hard work.
Yes.
That's a workout. You go pull some weeds for a few hours a day. You carry around bags of fertilizer. You lift pots, place them around. What are you doing? That's functional fitness.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's what people in this demographic want. That's what you can sell them on. Some of them are excellent athletes and want to remain excellent athletes. Some of them look spectacular in bathing suits and want to continue to look spectacular in bathing suits. Most of them want functional fitness so that they can do these kinds of things that we're talking about and not get fat and not get high blood pressure and not get diabetes and not fall. That's a whole other topic we could talk about for half an hour.
Yeah, and that was interesting. When we were talking on our initial phone call, you had an interesting stat about falling. You want to share that real quick? Like how long people live after they fall on average?
Yeah, it's terrifying. Okay, this would be a paraphrase because I'm thinking off the top of my head and I might get it wrong, but the idea is the same, that a substantial portion of older people who have a fall die within a year. Yeah. I think it might be 1 out of 4. It might even be higher than that. And falling is the biggest, most common physical fear about getting old, because everyone knows that if you fall, you might be done for. You might not be able to take care of yourself. You might not be able to live the life that you want. You might not be able to continue to live independently. And it can just be the thing that begins the end for so many people. So nothing is better for fall prevention than physical exercise. Everybody stumbles. We all, at any age, we're going to stumble. But when we're younger, we have the strength generally to right ourselves, right? So maybe we, lose our way a little bit and we catch ourselves. That's because we have strength. We have muscle tone. Later in life, we lose our muscle tone. You guys know this. I don't mean to be explaining this to experts like you all. But that's why part of the reason why older people tend to fall so much is because they don't have the muscle strength to correct themselves and maintain their upright position. And so by keeping them strong, you're helping them with that. You're also helping them with bone density, because without that muscle tone, their bones are vulnerable, right? So you keep their muscles in shape. You help to keep them from falling. You help prevent broken bones when they do fall. You need to be stressing that a great deal when you're talking to this audience, because it's something everybody's afraid of.
Yeah, I think sarcopenia and lack of bone density, osteoporosis is definitely a concern, and it's something that the biggest. What is it? How do you say that? The best thing to do about both of those is to not get them, right? So how do you do that? You strength train and you eat healthy.
Yeah. You see guys like you,
right?
Know what you're doing, who have taken the time to learn about these concerns and want to help.
Yep. So, and then the next thing I want to hit on is, and you touched on it real briefly, but I think it's really important. We talk about it a lot on the show, but I don't think it's something that you can talk about enough when it comes to posting content. I see a lot of trainers post like their own workouts or their PR lifts, you know, things like that on their posts, and like, look at how fit I am. Look at how strong I am. Come train with me.
Right.
And you said, nobody gives a shit, because it's not about you. It's not about what you do. It's about what can you do for them.
That's
for
right.
the people that are watching. You want to share about that? Because I think that is so, so important. And I see so many people miss the boat on that.
Absolutely. This is true in just about any business, any service business, but particularly in this, it's so visual because you see people, you know, posing with their shirts off or putting Instagram videos of themselves grunting away at their PRs or what have you, and talk going on and on their bio page about all the certifications they have. And, you know, once you're bona fide, so to speak, nobody cares. Once you're a legitimate personal trainer, as you all are, you have certification from somebody. I don't care if it's from ACE or NASM or any of the others, right? You might find somebody who does, but that's going to be a rare person. Mostly they want to know that you're legit, which you clearly are. They want to know that you care about them, whatever that target might be, whatever that niche might be. Nobody cares about how awesome you are. It would be a little bit like if on this conversation I kept talking about my career as a writer and how clever I am and what a great turn of phrase I came up with that time and how I really nailed that SOB in my tough interview with the Crooked County Commissioner back in '98. And who cares? No one cares, right?
Right.
And so that's just something that once you get it in, once you understand what I'm saying with that you're not training people so that you can talk about yourself. You're training people so that you can help them live the life they want to live. That is your sole function as far as I'm concerned. You know, show your girlfriend or your boyfriend how hot you are with your shirt off. Nobody else cares. And, you know, my response to that is, great, you have a great body. That's cool. Can you help me do what I need to do? That's all I care about. And when I say that's all I care about, I mean that's all any prospect or client cares about, really. So here's a good way to look at it. We've all seen Star Wars, right? And the hero of Star Wars is Luke Skywalker. Who's Luke's coach? Who's Luke's trainer? Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? Alec Guinness comes on halfway through the movie, and he's got the robe on, and he teaches him how to use the lightsaber and all that stuff. He teaches him about the Force. It's not about Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? It's about Luke Skywalker. So you're Obi-Wan, your client or your prospect is Luke Skywalker. It's their story. It's not your story.
That's a great analogy. I really like that. And I know for me, one of the big selling points when I get people in front of me for an assessment and I'm trying to sell them on a membership, one of the big selling points for me is that, hey, I'm 51. So I know that at 51, I can still train hard, but I can't train like I did when I was 25. I just can't do it. I might be able to do it once in a blue moon, but I can't do it day in and day out. And so when I have somebody who's 50 and over in front of me, I say, I know you still want to train hard, but you can't train like you were 25. So you get a lot of these 25, 26-year-old trainers says, I squat. I love squatting. It's good for me. Let's get you on a squat rack, Mrs. Johnson. You know, and it's like, no, you know, that's, you know, let's look at how you move first and clean up that and then get you on a squat rack or whatever. But that's a big selling point for me. So if you can get a 25, 26-year-old studio owner to understand that and make that one of their selling points, that's huge, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
That's really what we're talking about, is differentiating yourself with this expertise and perspective.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I've enjoyed this so much. I think it's so critical because I think it's such a powerful demographic from an economic standpoint. And I know we keep harping on that, but I think it's one of those things that needs to be said and needs to be heard. because like you said, a lot when it comes to the fitness business and fitness marketing, this demographic is almost invisible. And so, and a lot of people are missing the boat. Some people may not want that demographic, and that's fine, but at least be aware of it. Right. So I always close out with a couple of questions, and it's my favorite part of the podcast. I love it. And it's not a got you podcast. I'm not like trying to put you on the spot, but it's always spontaneous. And so we get some of the best sound bites and clips from this part, which is why it's my favorite. So my first question to you is, what has been your most successful failure? And by that, I mean, at the time, it seemed like just a devastating loss that you weren't going to be able to recover from, but you were able to take lessons from it and use those to propel you to greater success down the road.
Yeah, interesting question. I think generally I would say, oh boy, any of the large corporate jobs that I had they were eye-opening experiences for me, because I thought that, well, I'm a writer, I'm a communicator, that's what they want me to do. Not really, and that is not an environment in which I'm going to succeed. It's not an environment in which they want what I can do, and those are environments where I don't belong. It took me a long time to figure out that this just isn't a good fit for me. I came from newspapers, which is a very rambunctious, creative, work-focused environment. And then newspapers kind of disappeared, and I fell into corporate life. And it took me a while to figure out that I'm just not a corporate dude. And that was hard, really, really hard, because I met a lot of nice people. I learned a lot of good lessons. I made a lot of really good money, but it's just not for me. So
okay. And then so that's what led you to leave and go to CNN and create Prime Fit content?
Yeah, I had during that period that I was describing at the beginning, where I was just trying to figure out what to do. I said, what do I care about? I don't want to write about these corporate things anymore. I want to write about what I'm interested in. What interests me? I said, the media and politics and government and news. So I called up a friend and said, hey, I want to get back in the game. Can I come back? Can I come to CNN? The other thing I love is pop culture. And you might not know this, but a lot of TV shows and movies are filmed in Atlanta, and it's been used to do some on-the-ground PR. So I hooked up with them and was able to do that for a while. And the third topic that I care about enough to want to write about it all the time anyway is fitness. And that took a little while longer. I wasn't exactly sure how to find it. Like, what am I going to do here? I don't want to write about, just some trainer or just some gym or another corporation that's selling supplements or what have you. It took a while to find that more creative, way that I could get in there.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, good for you for following your passion, because so many people kind of stay stuck in those jobs that they just dread before the paycheck, and that also speaks to you being a little bit older, because when you're younger, it's like, I got this, the wife, the kids, I got to provide for them. We need health insurance. I got to have my 401k, whatever it is that you have. And then as you get older and your kids kind of go off and kind of do their own thing, you're like, I don't have this, big of a burden hanging over my head anymore. So why don't I do something that, really gets my juices flowing? So I think that's part of that is a function of just getting older.
Oh, absolutely. I wouldn't have had the nerve to do it 15 years ago, or maybe even 10 years before I did, because I don't know about you, but, getting over passing 50, 30 and 40 meant nothing, but passing 50 made me think, time is limited, I don't mean to get morbid about it, but it made me think I want to do what I want to do as much as possible. Like coming in, sitting in a cubicle and, typing up somebody's notes from a board meeting is not it. Not that there's anything wrong with that. People enjoy that, good for them. But it wasn't making me happy. And I said, I got to find something that's going to make me happy and going to fulfill me creatively. And yeah, it took me took me to get to the point in life where I said, I'm over 50 years old. I'm really good at this. I enjoy it. I used to enjoy it. I don't anymore. How can I enjoy it again? What's it going to take? And it took some work and some nerve, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good for you for following it and making that leap. I'm sure it's like, for me, the thing that I said, and I hear it all the time, when I finally pulled the trigger on it, it's like, man, I wish I'd done this a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. I absolutely get that. But I also just tend to think, hey, I'm sometimes slow to understand things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it took me a while to get there. So it takes what it takes.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And then my next question is, in your time in the fitness industry, running the Prime Fit content, what has been the biggest surprise that you've had to deal with that you did not see coming?
Oh boy. Okay. I'm going to give you one that's really positive and one that's was not negative, but more of a thing that I had to learn. The really positive thing is, again, you're going to think I'm blowing smoke, not sincere. Everyone I've met in fitness has been really nice and smart and helpful and kind and supportive of me and of each other. That was not the environment I was coming from most recently. And that, along with the sense of purpose that motivates you all, is really valuable to me. So I wasn't expecting to find that. I was thrilled that I did find it. And then the other thing is just, we were talking about this a little bit before you started recording, is I didn't know what I didn't know. And I was coming at everything I did from the vantage point of a lifelong communicator who spent all of his working life with other lifelong communicators. So now I'm learning that I have to modify my approach somewhat because I'm dealing with, people who don't obsess about words like I do and who don't know how to do every little weird thing with communications that I know how to do. It's been really humbling in a great sense because I've had to stop and reevaluate sort of where I'm coming from and what I'm trying to do with everything I'm writing and communicating. That's a great lesson for anybody in any kind of career, I think. So it's a great way to learn. But
yeah.
That was a surprise, yeah.
Yeah, those are two great points, because I do find that this industry attracts people who really want to help people.
Yep.
And that's, if you get in it, you stay in it. If you're a lifer, you really want to have an impact on people's lives because you know what fitness can bring to their life, not only now, but down the road. So I think this industry tends to attract that kind of person. And then when you were talking about, so you have all these expertise, but and know all these little nuances, but a lot of your clients don't.
Right.
And so instead of demanding that your clients learn your techniques, you had to craft your message and your product to fit your clients, right?
Absolutely. And that's been a really good thing to have to do at this point in my career, to stop and say, hey, wait a second. What was I just saying? It's not about me. It's about them. And, I'm not the point. The point is, what can I do for you?
Right.
You don't want me to make it difficult. You want me to make it easy. You don't want to listen to me blather on about word choice. You just want to know that I've got that covered, right? So it's been a great lesson to learn. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think it's a great lesson for people in this fitness industry, because I see a lot of people who are good trainers and have a tremendous amount of technical knowledge. And so when they're standing in front of the client, they're like, oh, what I want you to do is I want you to articulate your hip joint to where you're doing more internal rotation instead of external rotation, so that we can hit the glute medius and do all this stuff. And they're like, what? And they're like, I want to take away your knee pain. So what I need you to do is this and this, and this will help take away your knee pain. Oh, okay. Why didn't you just say that? So you have to craft your message for your audience.
That's right.
Despite all of your technical knowledge, because it's not about you overwhelming them with your tech speak. It's about them hearing what you're saying, taking it in and using it to make themselves better. Right. Yeah. Whether it's like you're a copywriter or writing copy for people, or a trainer training people.
That's right.
Yeah.
For anybody, it's all about communication. And when you are embarking on any communication, whether it's a training session or writing an article or calling your mother, whatever it might be, the first thing you ask yourself is, who am I talking to? So you can whip out all your extra super fancy knowledge about all the different bones and joints and muscles and ligaments and whatever, with your trainer buddies, right? Who's my audience? My trainer buddies. We're all going to geek out on all the difference between a sumo squat and a regular squat, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Your client might, maybe not. Maybe some of them do want to know that. You'll know that. It's part of your job. It's the art and finesse of relationships. But know who you're talking to. And then the second thing is, what are you trying to tell them and why? And if you just stop and ask yourself that, you're halfway there.
Yeah. Good advice. Good advice. And then my last question is, where do you go to for your personal and professional development? You read books, you read podcasts, seminars?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, I read all kinds of things all the time, just because I'm a writer and generally that's part of what we do. So, but for this, since I got into the fitness business, I've really been educating myself so much because I came at it new a couple of years ago, right? So I had to dig in to learn about the business, and I still am. And it's great. I'm very curious about it, and I'm meeting so many people who are helpful and open and transparent about it. So I belong to a mastermind of the Functional Aging Institute that involves regular contact with a coach, and also quarterly meetings of the mastermind. Just got back from one in Indianapolis recently, where I'm kind of, I don't want to say I'm the odd man out because I'm part of the group and they make me feel like it, but everyone else is a gym owner or a studio owner or a trainer. So the great value for me is to just sit and listen and maybe occasionally ask a question. But they've taught me so much about the fitness business, and continue to. I also have another coach who's in fitness marketing, so that's a little more specific on what I'm trying to do. I listen to your podcast and some other people's fitness podcasts. I read everything I can find, that's helpful. Part of how I create the content is through doing reporting. So I'm always talking to people, doing interviews, going somewhere, reading this, reading that, listening to something that informs either my knowledge or the content directly. And I read the sort of mainstream media sources, New York Times and CNN, and like I said, I love pop culture. I'm always reading Entertainment Weekly or those kind of sources for my hobby. It's important to have a hobby. It's important to get out of the gym and lift your head around and see what's going on and have relationships with your friends and your family. Take care of yourself. Get out of your own head a little bit. So I try to do that on a regular basis as well. Because, as you know, entrepreneurship, man, it can be 8 days a week, and I love it. I really do. It's a blast, and I really love the time I spend at CNN. But I got to take care of myself too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody does.
Yeah. You got to put your mask on first. If the plane's going down, you got to put your mask on before you can help anybody else, right?
Right.
So, if you're not, then you're not going to be able to help anybody if you're not filling your own gas tank. So I think that is so important, that self-care and development. I really do. And Jay, this has been great. Where can people get in touch with you if they want to find out more about you, ask you questions, sign up for your program, all that good stuff?
Super great. The main place to be on my website, which is primefitcontent.com. It's prime like prime in your life, fitcontent.com. I also have a free Facebook group for fitness professionals. It's called Prime Fit Pros, PROS, where we don't just talk about content and communications. It's a little more broad, but the focus tends to be on the over 50 market. So I'm also on I'm on Facebook. I have my website. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. On Instagram, it's Prime Fit Content there as well. So find me anywhere. Shoot me an email, jay@primefitcontent.com. Would love to hear from you or talk to you anytime.
Awesome. And if you go to trainergym.net and click on this episode of the podcast, all of those links will be in the show notes. So if you want to do that, you can just always go to Trainer Gym, click on this episode, scroll down the show notes, and they will be right there. You can reach out to Jay and find out more about him and this demographic and his product. So Jay, thanks a lot. I would love the right to reserve to have you back on the show sometime, because this has been great. Yeah, it's been really insightful for me. So I appreciate you taking the time.
Well, thank you, Jim. I appreciate it as well. It's been great talking to you.
Yeah. And next time I'm down in the ATL, I go down there fairly regularly to see Rick. Would have to catch some coffee or something.
Yeah, catch me in the city. I live in the city. Rick's way out in the suburbs. So
Yeah.
you come in from the airport, you hang out with me, you get a little urban life, and then you can go see him out.
Perfect. Well, I'll definitely set that up for
Okay,
sure.
look forward to it.
All right, man. Well, have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, you too.
All righty. Bye.
Bye.